Hey, everybody. Welcome to the webinar, Stewardship Jumpstart Treasure. Last month, we did Stewardship Jumpstart Talents. And, as you know, as you're watching this as a parish leader, you know that in the last year and a half, a lot of folks have become disconnected. And a big way that that's impacted us is through stewardship. And so we're going to talk with some experts about the best ways to get people engaged in stewardship, some practitioners as well. Before we do that, I want to first just give you a big welcome from Parish Catalyst and Renew and give you a little bit of logistics on how this works if you haven't been with us before. Across the bottom of your screen, you'll see both a chat button and a Q&A button. The chat button is for us to post things for you to see, links to information. We'll tell you who the speakers are, how you can find out more about them, resources that are mentioned. That'll all be in the chat window. That's just for us to chat with you. If you want to chat with us, then hit the Q&A button and you can post a question there, and that'll go to us and we'll either respond to it directly or during the webinar or after the webinar. So glad you're with us, and I hope this is a really fruitful time for you. At Parish Catalyst, we always say that we encourage parish leaders to think creatively and act courageously and renew the church. And there has never been a time that that is more needed. But I can also say there's never been a time that I've seen it so active in the church, people thinking creatively, acting courageously. And I want to give a shout out before we get into our topic to some parishes that are joining us today that I've had the privilege of working with these creative and courageous leaders. St. Pius X in Billings, Archdiocese of Newark. I'm going to be coming to see you folks in a couple months. St. Thomas More in Houston. I was just down in Houston. St. Joseph in Amarillo. I'm actually coming to see you guys in 2 weeks. And then St. Bridget in San Diego, one of my favorites that you'll hear mentioned. You'll hear them mentioned here from time to time. Well, with all that covered, let's get into the topic of stewardship. And I'm going to review a little bit of what we talked about last month. I encourage you to go back and watch that webinar if you didn't. But let's review that a little bit, and then we'll get in pretty quick into our first interview. So when we talk about stewardship, we got to just lay a foundation that we're all on the same page, that stewardship is about being good guardians. Of course, to us, this means good guardians in context of our faith, but being good guardians of everything that God has given us. It includes time, talent, treasures, but it includes prayer, it includes social justice, it includes the environment, a lot of different things. Last month, as I said, we focused on talents, the gifts that people are given, serving with their gifts and their time. And this week, we're looking at treasure. Our first conversation today is with Chris Looney and Lindsay Fryermuth. They are with CCS Fundraising and out of LA, but CCS works all across the country. They were actually referred to me by Monsignor Lloyd Torgerson at St. Monica's because they've done such an incredible job for them over the years. So let's go to that conversation now. Some really good stuff, both on giving and helping people give more regularly and live in that joy of that stewardship. But also towards the end, hang in there, he's going to talk about people's wills and helping grow people in stewardship through ways that we might not have thought of. So let's take a look at that conversation now. All right, Chris and Lindsay, thank you for joining me today. And I just want to start off looking at the spirituality of stewardship, specifically generosity and giving. And Chris, how important is it to lay that foundation? And what does that look like? What are your thoughts on that aspect of this topic?
Yeah, I don't think generosity comes naturally to most people. I think it's something that is grown within someone over the course of time and often is brought out by certain influential people in their lives, parents perhaps, colleagues, friends, spouses, but also priests and religious leaders who need to take time to educate individuals on the spirituality of giving. That it is, in fact, not because God needs our money, but because we need to give, to soften our hearts, to express the gratitude we should have to God for all of the blessings that He's provided to us in our lives. That uh, Giving and generosity is fundamentally something that draws us closer to God. And as such, I think it's important for priests and other religious leaders to really help create an opportunity for their parishioners, their congregants to learn and grow in that aspect of faith. I believe that parishes do provide the platform to engage in ministry, um, to give, to respond to giving. But it's sort of like inviting someone to the library without teaching them to read, if that's an appropriate analogy. Like I think it's great to have all these books, but if I don't know how to read, it's not accessible to me. So the same thing I see with parishes and parish life. If I don't know how to exercise those muscles of volunteering or giving, or what it means, why God has invited me into these two areas, then I'm not going to volunteer. I'm not going to give because I don't understand the value. I don't even comprehend why it's necessary or why it's appropriate. So I think parishes fundamentally have a responsibility to talk about the spirituality of giving. The fact that God doesn't need our money. That's not why God asks us to give. He gave us money. He provides for all of our needs. He doesn't need it back. He gives us this opportunity to give so that we can show gratitude, so that we can open our heart to other things other than our own needs. And so we can sort of be a reflection of Jesus Christ in the way that so much was sacrificed for us. The least we can do is sacrifice a bit for others as well. So I think there's a bit of responsibility that the parish has in terms of education and unlocking people's capacity to be generous and to be giving, both in terms of money, but also in terms of time and in service.
I think that's a great analogy. Lindsay, how have you seen parishes help people learn to read, or help people learn to be generous and learn to live in the joy of stewardship as a disciple?
Yeah, it's a great question, John. And I think, the way that I've seen it be most effective is by utilizing those parishioners who are giving generously to help inspire others, right? Telling their own story. I find that often most of those stories start with, I was a bit reluctant at first, right? It's almost always the start of the story. I was a bit reluctant at first, or it might be that, their family, their parents, ask them to give a portion of their allowance or something. So there's usually some start along those lines. But hearing them talk about the blessings that they've received because of their giving, how God has really spoken into their life with the change in their priorities, their financial priorities. I think of when we think of a family or a marriage or an individual, finances is usually the top 1, 2, or 3 priorities for most people, right? And so if you've invited God into that top priority, your whole life is shifting. And so, I think those testimonials from generous donors are one of the top ways I've seen. And inviting, time to do that, devoting time and energy at the parish to provide for giving. We think about how much time do we devote to the offertory versus other things during the Mass, right? And I experience this on a weekly basis. The basket might be passed. It's probably the fastest thing that happens in the Mass of every Mass I go to. It takes the shortest amount of time, and yet it's such an essential part of when we think about how we're interacting with the parish and how we're interacting with the mission. So devoting that time during Mass or during conversations, devoting the time to talk about it, brings it up in terms of priority for people.
So I hear you saying storytelling is really powerful from the position of generous parishioners, people like Chris, maybe, who have that spiritual gift of generosity. And I've heard it said that some things are better caught than taught. And we kind of catch that when we hear people talking about it who have that gift. And then I do think your point, making more time for it, is what we make time for, we are saying is important. What other things during the past year of this pandemic, where we've seen some parishes actually do pretty well, what are some other things that you've seen parishes do over the last year that have proven to be successful?
Sure. I'd say some things that have been really successful is continuing that storytelling online, right? So utilizing your website, or some of the most innovative ones have been using Instagram, ways that people can interact via video with your organization, not just pictures, not just text, but can see their pastor interacting in the community, can see volunteers, supporting feeding the hungry, can see, what's going on at the parish in any, day or time, is really interesting and inspiring, and helps share that mission that Chris was talking about. So sharing your story in that way, utilizing technology in terms of how to give too. This last year has really forced a lot of parishes to think about how to do online giving. And many who have never done it before were suddenly almost forced to. So utilizing technology in the last year has also been a huge boom.
So you said those things have been working for parishes over the last year who've been implementing them, doing them. What about the parish leaders that are watching right now that would say, we haven't been doing those things, we're behind the 8 ball, we've kind of been disconnected from our people? What would you suggest for them in getting this started in their parish?
I'll say a little something and then toss it over to Chris too, because I know he's got some good advice. But one thing that I think we can all apply is, the best time to start was yesterday, and the second best time to start is today. So you're not at a total loss. Just because you didn't get onto Instagram a year ago does not mean that people are not paying attention or not willing to give you attention at that point right now. So I'd say start with something that you can start with. Right? You don't have to tackle all of this all at once. You don't have to be on all the social media platforms and redo your website and determine your planned giving platform all today. Take a step that you can take today and work your way through the rest. It can be very overwhelming. And I know, Chris, you had some thoughts on that too.
Yeah, it can be very overwhelming. And I think it's most helpful to just take baby steps toward the future that you envision. I know that there are fundamental steps that need to be taken in order to be successful in receiving generosity and giving from parishioners. And one is to understand your vision for the future, the parish's vision for the future. Where are you going? What are you trying to accomplish? What does success look like? Who are you and who do you want to be a couple of years down the road? And what are those needs that you have that will allow you to be successful, whether it's hiring new staff, paying down debt, building a new building, establishing an endowment. Who knows? There are myriad needs at parishes, even in an endowment to support the ongoing maintenance of the facilities. And there's a cost associated with all of those things. So the transparency and accountability of those goals build a story. And once you understand yourself and your needs, then you can create that story. And you have to share that pretty broadly. The communication aspect of it, This is not the time to be shy about what your needs are. We've talked about philanthropy and giving as the lifeblood of the church. You know, it's often said, you want more mission, give me more money, right? More money, more mission. And I think this goes back to education. If people don't fundamentally understand the connection between the dollar you give and the outreach and ministry and service that ultimately is provided to them and their community, then it's an impossible mission to be successful. So educating the community on the connection between giving and ministry and mission is so incredibly important. And you made a good point earlier, Lindsay, just about the importance of testimonials. It is important to have leadership. I don't know of anything that's more important in giving, whether it's in the church setting or more broadly in other nonprofit areas in the community. Leadership, good leadership, both internal, meaning sort of the priest and your boards, maybe the parish council or the finance council, but also externally, certain lay leaders. Having strong leadership is probably the most important indicator of success in giving. If you have strong leadership in those areas and they're speaking confidently and passionately about the importance of giving, then my experience is that the parish will adopt a new culture. We'll think of giving in a different and important way.
When you talk about communications on this, and I think we've seen kind of two areas that are really important here: communication of the vision, communication of the spirituality of generosity, and then technology of how they're going to do it. If the priest or the pastor are not real strong in that, or don't feel real strong in communicating about money, have you seen situations where other parishioners, lay leaders, staff can step up and take that role? Or is that really something that they need to learn to get better at? Lindsay, what have you seen in that?
Yeah, John, I'm gonna have to say it's both and, right? If there's ever a question in a parish, often the parish priest is where the buck stops. So if they're not actively promoting the spirituality of giving, if they're not encouraging it in some way, they're really almost acting against it, right? They're not prioritizing it. They're not saying it's a good thing. But that doesn't mean that you have to be the world's greatest speaker and greatest visionary in order to do that, right? I know we've seen a number of parishes where, even a finance council lead or a parish council lead, or even, it could be a deacon. I think there are certain people in every parish that are gifted with that kind of being able to be a visionary and being able to communicate how your dollars translate into the mission in a really compelling way. And so your priest may be blessed with being a number cruncher, and his deacon may be blessed with being a great communicator. And I think, as Chris was saying, it's the greatest strength to be able to utilize both of those gifts, right? If everyone's blessed differently, the benefit of a parish community is we can all come together to use our gifts in different ways to support the mission of the church.
All right, tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth here, but here's what I'm hearing you say, is that this isn't the gift of every pastor to be great at talking about this and asking for it, and they need to empower and raise up people around them that are great at it, but nothing can replace the pastor's voice at speaking at it to some degree as being important. Would you agree with that?
I definitely agree.
I agree as well. And not being good at something isn't an excuse for not doing it at all. I find that one of the benefits or the great opportunities we have in campaign fundraising is that we get to often work with priests who are reluctant fundraisers. And it's an education process. And I don't expect that they are great fundraisers. I just expect that they have a willingness to learn, to embrace the importance and significance of the activity, and that they will find a way to contribute in a meaningful way and maybe even grow over time. I've had several experiences with priests where they would share their fear of talking about money, asking for money initially in the campaign. And after 40 or 50 visits, even if they didn't ask for the gift in a lot of those situations, they had a level of comfort in talking about and speaking to families about generosity that was not in existence before. And they would say what a positive experience it is to know a family and relate to a family on such a deeper, more human level. And it, I think, ultimately strengthened the bond and the relationship and the trust that a pastor had with those families, even if they weren't asking for the money, if they were just involved in the conversation with maybe some other volunteer who was responsible for making the ask. And we all know that in fundraising, when you say the word fundraising, everybody imagines the ask. No one ever imagines the weeks and months and effort that's put into all of the other things that go into the moment where you might make an ask of someone, right? It's just people's fear comes out. They immediately go to the thing that they think is most scary, which is the ask itself. And Lindsay and I will tell you that fundraising is so much more than just the ask. It's a really robust process of relationship building and trust building, where if you've done all of those things well, the gift of generosity comes out in people. Sometimes you don't even have to ask because of all the good work that you've done. People volunteer to be generous themselves.
Oh yeah, I'd love to tell a story actually about my pastor, who I helped through a campaign. And I think Chris is right. A lot of people are very scared of the ask, but they also don't think about the answers, because the answer is often yes, right? It's often, I want to help you, I want to support you, and here's how I'm going to do it. Or I want to support you, but maybe I can't do it quite at that level. I wish I could, but here's what I'm going to do. It's incredible to see people's generosity and to be part of that moment. I actually had my pastor during our campaign, I had volunteers and other parishioners coming up to me as campaign counsel saying, when is Father going to come and ask me for a gift? I've been waiting. He still hasn't come to talk to me. And I had to communicate to my pastor. I said, Father, they're waiting. They want you to come and talk to them. It's an honor for them to have you in their home, to have this conversation with you, to spend the time with you, to enjoy your company, and to be able to talk with you about how they can invest with you in this community. And he was so scared. He was so scared. And he said, oh, Lindsay, I'd eat nails. I'd eat nails before I ask anyone for a gift. I'd eat nails. I can't do it. Can't do it. And I said, well, I need you to do 5 requests, right? I said, no, Lindsay, I can't. It's too many. Can I count as one of those requests? I said, sure. So just do 4. Well, the funny thing is he got through those 4. And then every time we talked about campaign requests after that, he said, well, I should really be the one to talk to this family. And I should really be the one to talk to this family too. And by the end of it, I think he probably had about 70 or 80 different requests under his belt after several months and he loved it at the end. There's always still that little fear, but he loves being part of their lives and our lives in that way.
That is so encouraging. And I do think once you break through that fear and start talking and start asking and start seeing the fruit of it, right, then it becomes much easier. Chris, like you were saying, just because you're not good at it doesn't mean you shouldn't look to grow in it. And as you do, you see some results and suddenly you gain confidence, you get better at it. You know, one thing I think is a misnomer, um, uh, just from the experience that parishes are having, is that millennials and young adults, young families don't give, because they're seeing the old faithful that give to the institution, and they're not seeing as much giving there. Now, research data tells us that's just not true. That millennials are as generous or more than previous generations. They volunteer more. And Giving Tuesday, which is the Tuesday after Black Friday, this year, people gave $2.5 billion to nonprofits. And what I tell parishes is they're giving, they're just not giving to you. And so, Chris, what would you say? Where do people give, especially those young families, young adults? Where do they give, and how can we become one of those people?
I would say more often than not, millennials, but people broadly. I hesitate to suggest that there is a dramatic difference among different generations. They're all in some ways looking for the same thing, but maybe there's a higher level of intensity for those things in organizations that they have the least amount of history supporting, right? So there's a relationship that needs to be built. But I would say three things. One, maybe they're not seeing the need. Maybe they're not connecting to the cause because of a failure to be clear about the importance of the mission of the organization or what you're trying to accomplish with the dollars that are going to be invested, that you're asking for them to support. Secondly, there is a need to have relationships with these individuals. You have to be in relationship with them. There needs to be that relationship for someone to be motivated to give. And third, they have to be asked. And this doesn't mean asked by text or asked by email, or even asked in person, but asked in a meaningful and thoughtful way. And it probably is not one size fits all, but reaching that particular demographic or person or group in the way that is most meaningful to them. So for a young professionals group within a parish, it's probably being out with them at one of their events or meetings and getting to know them and finding a way to ask for their particular support. So those three things, connecting to the need or understanding the need, having the relationships, and then being sure to make the ask.
Those are great points, and we've seen it true statistically. I don't know if you saw the Villanova research on the increased giving for parishes that streamed online during the pandemic. But if you shut things down, you told people to stream the diocese, the cathedral, and you didn't connect with people for a year, I'm not shocked that your giving went down. But if you expressed the need to people, you connected relationally, you asked them, those are three really basic but key components to that. I just want to open it up now. Any thoughts that you guys have had during our conversation, or things that you would just really want a pastor or a parish leader that's out there listening to kind of a parting thought that you'd like them to leave with?
I guess for me, my parting thought would be emphasizing probably my last point, is that talking about money and talking about giving can actually be a blessing to both you and the person that you're talking with, right? It may seem scary, but the more you do it, the more you can see the various blessings and how much your parishioners appreciate it. They're being called to be insiders with you and be partners with you in the life of the church. And that can really deepen their relationship both with God and with the parish.
That's great. I guess I'm going to have to get on my soapbox for a minute just to talk about a couple of things. One is my fundamental belief that fundraising is a key ministry of the church. and needs to be, given, as Lindsay said, time, but also the space to grow and a level of importance that it deserves, because it's ministry, it's spiritual, it's a tool that God has given us to unlock doors that are unimaginable to most people that haven't experienced the abundance of life that happens when you're a generous person. The second is that there's this phrase that I love, that it speaks to the evolution of someone's journey in giving, and it's sort of the path of giving to a need that ultimately is needing to give. And I get goosebumps every time I think about it, because when I was young, I always thought of myself as giving to something that is important. There's a need there. Like I need to help something. I need to support a need and solve a problem. Then I realized I'm the problem. I'm the one that needed to give for my own sake, right? That I was the one that was needing to give more, and it made me extraordinarily happy. The last thing I would say is we've talked a lot about offertory and campaign giving, I suppose, but those aren't the only ways that people can be generous. The thing that I wanted to point out is that there are tax laws changes that are afoot. And if there has ever been a great time for people to contemplate a rather significant gift to their church, it's going to be within the next 6 months. And so there is an opportunity, I feel, for parishes to be particularly communicative as it relates to giving, because if the parish isn't going to get it, I guarantee it's going somewhere else. And you don't want to miss out on that opportunity. In the same vein, I would say we need to figure out how we can stop missing opportunities for parishes to participate in planned giving. It is the oldest nonprofit that has the weakest planned giving program. And it's about time that parishes individually did more to promote and discuss and find ways to unlock people's generosity through their wills and estates, their trust, their other planned giving vehicles, whether it's retirement plans or insurance or whatever it might be. We've just failed as a Catholic community to talk about that sufficiently, and we're being beat to the punch. So, I'll get off my soapbox, but those are my two big things that I wanted to sort of communicate before letting this go.
Those are great things to be on the soapbox for. And wow, thank you guys so much. I mean, the thoughts and insight you've given could be incredibly valuable, literally, to parishes that will put them into practice. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. And I will share with parishes how they can get in touch with you if they want to learn more.
Thanks, John. And God bless your ministry. So great to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful for them for joining us. And I hope, like me, you can see their heart for growing people in all of this. Chris clearly has a gift of generosity, and it just excites him to help other people discover that. In the email that you'll receive after this webinar, it'll probably come out Thursday morning. Keep an eye out for that. Check your junk mail folder if you don't see it in your primary mail folder. In that email, there'll be a link to this webinar, but there'll also be links to resources, to CCS, to other things. And there'll be, CCS has a bunch of free resources on their website for helping Catholic parishes grow their people in stewardship. And I'll put a few of those in the email itself. But I also want to let you know about a resource that we have coming out at Renew in the fall. And it's called Grateful Living, the Joy of Stewardship. And Lisa Anslinger has been working on this. It's fantastic. And it's not just a small group curriculum, it is a process for growing people, growing disciples in your parish in this area of stewardship. So if you're looking for something that will help people grow as a person, grow in spiritual maturity. It's not something that just tells people they should give. It helps them really tap into God's generosity in their life and having a heart of gratitude and growing in this area. So be on the lookout for that. As a part of this webinar, you'll be some of the first people to get information when it's available. So also want to let you know our virtual learning community, we have pushed the dates back to September, late September, specifically because we had some pastors that were either getting their first assignments or getting reassigned that wanted some time to get situated at their parish. And if you are a new pastor or you have a new pastor, a virtual learning community would be a fantastic thing for your team to go through together to really help lay a foundation of discipleship in your parish. But it's open to all parish leaders and pastors. Limited space is available. We only do 6 parishes when we do this online. I want to, before we get into our last half of this webinar, just give you a couple insights into this process, because I've had some people say, hey, we're just trying to figure out how to get people re-engaged right now. There's a lot of things we're trying to discern about the future of our parish. A learning community is not a program with a curriculum that you have to implement. A learning community is a communal discernment and planning and learning and growing process to help you figure out what you're going to do and how that's going to work. It's 6 parish teams. They gather 4 times over 2 years. And each time we gather for a couple of days. And in that time together, we do this. We have you evaluate what's happening in your parish. What's working? Where are we struggling? Where do we need help? We then learn some aspects of thriving parishes. We look at growing disciples, making disciples, what really works. Small groups, growing volunteers, communications, the weekend experience, reaching millennials, all of these things. Then we explore, as parish teams, you'll explore what are some best practices we can implement? What are some things we could try that we've never tried before? And then you'll process all of that information and create a strategic plan that you will take away with you for the next 6 months that you created. We didn't tell you what needs to be on your plan. You create this plan for your parish. And I think one of the big keys to why this process works is that it happens in the midst of collaborating with other parish leaders, and there's accountability. You don't just leave with a plan and we never see you again. You're coming back in 6 months and you're going to talk to us about what worked and what didn't. And then we'll evaluate, we'll learn more, we'll explore best practices and ideas. We'll process that among your team and with other parish teams, and then you'll create a plan. And that process, again, happens 2 more times over that 2-year period. So if that sounds like something that you think could really help get your parish unstuck, again, we're not trying to add more to your plate. We're trying to help you break free and thrive. Reach out and let us know. And then lastly, I just want you to know that I am traveling. In-person on-site workshops are back. I was just in Minneapolis last month. It was awesome to be with people. And we did some staff workshopping with their team. And then we also did their parish mission in a more workshop model where parishioners listened and learned, but then they also huddled up in small groups and talked about their own faith journey. It was very interactive and just alive and invigorating. So think about that. What could we do to help you creatively reinvigorate your parish, whether it be hospitality, which I know everyone's thinking about. We need to improve and re-engage our hospitality, growing volunteers, small groups. Let us know. We'd love to come to your parish and help you with that. So in wrapping up here, I've got one more short conversation I want to look at, but I just want to recap kind of what we've heard today and even a month ago. And that is that stewardship starts with communication. It starts with the pastor and the leaders talking about it from a why it's important for people and what it can do for people, not just what God wants from them. So today is Taco Tuesday, And in honor of Taco Tuesday, I just want to say we got to taco more about stewardship. Uh, I hope you enjoyed that. I have many more bad jokes. If you'll come to a learning community, you'll hear all of them. All right, let's go to this last conversation I have here. It's a brief one, but it's Father Ethan Southard and Clarissa Martinez from St. John Eudes in Chatsworth, California. This is a conversation we actually had earlier in the year, kind of in the midst of the pandemic, about how they had been struggling with stewardship and how they really broke out of it and have had incredible stewardship engagement since then. So let's check that out. And Father Ethan, one other thing we talked about was giving during this time. And what a challenge that's been for so many parishes, their collections, their budgets. Tell us your story, because I think it's amazing.
Well, it's very real. And early on, I think the vulnerability component is essential. Early on, our collections went down at least 50%. And so we start seeing the numbers come in, and it's just staying calm. We had a rainy day fund that was going to be there for, a little while, and we were able to get the loan, the PPP loan from the government, which was very helpful. But we start looking, long term, and then, I was having some sleepless nights, and just, I could feel the burden and the weight, and then just trying to figure things out on my own. And I've got a core team that I meet with, core team of leaders that I meet with on a regular basis, weekly basis. We pray together, we share. Carissa's on that team. And so I had come in on one evening, and I think one of the other members, Christina, she just looked at me, and she could tell something was wrong. She could just see I was just withdrawn and in myself. She said, "Father, what's the matter?" And I shared with her, I said, "Look, our budget's down, our collections are down 50%. If we don't, I'm going to be forced to make changes sometime soon." And she says, "Father, give us a chance." She says, give the parish a chance. You have to let us know what's happening. You have to give us a chance to respond. She says, we're there to support you. You'd be surprised. And so with her encouragement and support, and the support of that team, I went and made an announcement that Sunday after Mass. And I was open and I was honest. I said, "Hey, this is where we are." I wanted to be transparent. We're down 50%. If things don't shift sometime soon, we're going to have to make some changes. And Clarissa helped make some videos, and we started talking about Christina saying, "Give us a chance." I had written a letter to the parish as well. I wanted to give them a chance to know what was happening and our need. And I also talked about what you were saying, John. I said, these are the resources in the area. Here's Catholic Charities, here's St. Vincent de Paul if you need food, if you need rental assistance. And I also mentioned our need. At the time, we actually needed a new vehicle. And so I mentioned it in the letter. And someone responded and gave a Volvo SUV. And I thought, he said, and he saw this letter, and this wasn't an active parishioner. This was someone who he had stopped going to church. His daughter had been confirmed years ago, but I guess he was still on the mailing list. Saw the letter. He didn't want to open it. He opened it, read it, didn't want to call, but God was touching his heart. So finally he calls a week later and says, "I'm sure you've gotten a lot of response already." Business manager said, "No, nobody's called." So he said, "Well, all right, well, here's my card." And so I had him, his name's Mike. I had him on the video. And so we started to share about the need of the community and the need of the parish. And I'll tell you, John, our collections went up from 50%. We went up over 100%, and it's been consistent for the last couple months. Our online giving has gone up 4 to 5 times the amount. And it's not just one-time gifts, those are recurring gifts. And so all of a sudden, this flood of goodwill and support has come into the parish. But they wouldn't have known if I didn't have the support and the courage to be vulnerable, to be transparent, and to place that need back to the community and say, "Hey, this is where we are, can you help us?" And people are so grateful for saying, thank you for letting us know. There was one family and they said, Father, we heard your appeal, we heard your need, and we decided to give up our pizza night. Once a month we would go out for pizza, where we would order pizza in, and we're spending, $50, $60 with the tip. We decided to give that to the parish giving. And that's been most of our collections. It's been the $10, it's the $15 a week, it's the $60 a month. It's not a big $10,000 gift. It's just the small, consistent giving. And it's really, the community's responded in a beautiful way.
Some great stories there. First, about his courage to step up and talk about it, talk about the need, talk about the inspiration behind why it's important that they want to help people. But what I love about that is the life change that happened, and that family that gives up pizza night and communicates with each other about why we're giving up pizza night and where this money's going to and why it's important. The gentleman that gave the car that was unengaged from the parish, and we talked more about that, and he said now he attends and serves regularly, and he's like my buddy. Like him giving this car to the parish changed his life because it engaged him. Jesus said, where your treasure is, your heart will be also. And it engages our people's hearts in the parish life when they give, and we need to communicate that with them. So I want to just in closing reiterate some things that you've heard today. Communicate from the why. If you've heard any of my webinars, you know how important this is. If we're not communicating from the why, which usually we're not, it's just sounds like a lot of you should, and not inspiring and compelling as to how it can impact people's lives. Want to communicate that stewardship is about living in gratitude. It's about being children of the grateful, giving God who gave his son because of his love for us. It's about living an abundant life. It's about that when we live freely with our finances, with our resources, it's a joyful thing. It's fun to invest in the lives of others and to be generous. And lastly, that it's about being a disciple of Jesus. That essentially all of this has got to be under the umbrella of discipleship, of forming people in maturity spiritually. That's our calling. So there were some things that we hit on that are key talking points about treasure. And one is start with why, as I've said. But I think both Father Ethan and Chris highlighted how important it is to share the need with people, not in a guilty way, not in a pressuring way, but so that they understand, hey, we're all a part of this spiritual family. Here's the needs of that spiritual family right now. Have people share personal witnesses. Both people share about the joy of generosity, but also people who've been impacted by that generosity. So it's important to talk about the needs also that you're meeting in the community. So if you have a soup kitchen, or if you have a food pantry, or if you're doing something, the needs of people that are homebound, hearing those people share about the blessing that the parish has been to them motivates people towards being a part of that. So personal witnesses of the givers and the receivers. And you have to ask. You have to make the ask. When we were talking about this, I remembered I was at my dry cleaner the other day picking up a really expensive suit that I had dry cleaned. And I don't highlight that it was expensive to say that I've got money. I just mean this was a big investment for me, this suit. And I had it altered. And trusting someone with it was a big deal. And because, a tailor can really mess something up, right? So when I got it back and I paid for it and I tried it on, I was like, man, I should tip these people. But you know why I didn't? Because they didn't ask. You know why I tip at a coffee shop? Because they asked and they made me a cup of coffee. It's not nearly the trust that I put into the tailor. All that's to say is often people don't give because we don't ask. And as Lindsay said, we need to take time to ask. During the Mass, during the liturgy, we need to make it an intentional ask that communicates why this is an important time for everyone there. Lastly, just always share stories as much as you can, again, of the givers and the receivers. I want to remind you of where Chris said people give to. This may be their parish and it may not, but they give to where they see a need. Millennials give more to causes than to institutions. Older generations just gave to the institution because they should. With millennials, even more, we need to communicate the cause, why it's important, why it would be a blessing for them to be a part of it. They give where they have relationships with parish staff, with volunteers, with parish leaders. Relationships are really important. And I will, Lindsay talked about having her pastor go and sit in people's homes and make an ask towards probably a capital campaign. I will add this caveat to that. A very wealthy parishioner once said to me, you know what's funny is the only time that I get a call from the pastor is when they need money. Don't let that be the only time that you build relationships with people. You should be connecting with them anyways, but they're going to give where they have relationships with people in leadership. So consider that. And then lastly, people give where they are asked. Again, just to reiterate that importance. And again, tell stories. So I want to give you some electronic giving options that I think you should be doing at least 3 out of 4 of these to maximize online and electronic giving. Anyone under 50 at your parish does not have a checkbook. Anyone under 40 doesn't even know what a checkbook is. So when we pass the plate, when we have offering envelopes, for many of them, that just, they're going to tip whatever cash they have in their pocket, and usually it's not a lot, if any. So your website needs to be a place that they can easily give online. Don't make them fill out a 20-line questionnaire. Make it simple. You should have a text to give option, which most online giving platforms offer this. If not, it's easy to find. And then apps, and I will say most parish apps I've seen are not very utilized by parishioners. They really need to be very robust and user-friendly to be utilized by parishioners. But when I say apps here, I'm talking about a common app that people exchange money through. Venmo and PayPal now have nonprofit options. And I will say that pretty much everyone under 50 at your parish either has Venmo or PayPal on their phone. And when they make it when you make it easy for them to give through that app, they already have their credit card information entered into that. They don't have to do it all over again. Also, we'll say in your online masses, are you making it easy to give for those who are watching online? This is a webinar that I just posted last week. Not a webinar, sorry, a blog that references a Washington Post story about a Villanova study on parishes that streamed online in 2020. And their giving, although many of them still had a dip in giving, their dip was 20% less than those who did not stream online. And so this is in comparison to their giving at their parish the year before. So this is all based per capita per parish. If you are continuing to stream online, which I hope you are, every successful parish that I know is continuing to stream online and build community with people online. I hope that you're making it easy to either click on a link to give or even put a QR code on the screen during the collection time in the Mass. Make it easy for people to give online, and I think you'll be surprised how many will. I want to just close with these reminders. It's about discipleship. Stewardship is about growing people spiritually, whether it be time, talents, or treasure. It's all about helping each of us walk with Jesus as servants of God. Take time to talk about it, educate people on it, inspire them with it, tell stories about it. And when you do, communicate first from the why. Why is it important to them? Why is it important to God? And what does God want for them from this? And lastly, make it easy to give, whether they're online or in person. You can even have QR codes on the back of the pew in a card where they can give from their phone right there in the pew. So that's it for our time today. I so appreciate you joining us. I just want to remind you that we're here for you. We just want to see parishes thrive. That's our goal. That's our heart. Want to see people have an encounter with Christ, to be accompanied in that relationship with Christ, and to grow in their faith. And if we can help you with that, we would love to. Let us know. We will see you next month, same place. Look for an email in the next week. Thank you. God bless.